Hello and welcome to Passing Priority. My name is Mike and today we're looking to build a deck that I hope will get a lot of support when Innistrad Crimson Vow is released. To understand the idea behind this deck, we first need to have a look at the Midnight Hunt commander decks. Each of these decks was a tribal deck that also used one of the mechanics from the set as an additional theme. So the Undead Unleashed is a zombie tribal deck with a Decayed sub-theme. And for Coven counters, this was a Coven mechanic deck with a human sub-theme. Now let's look at what the new command decks are called. They are Vampiric Bloodline and Spirit Squadron. So we will be very surprised if these decks are not Vampire and Spirit Tribal. However, it is likely they will also feature a mechanic from the Crimson Vow set, just like the Midnight Hunt commander decks did. In my opinion, the Vampire deck will be a new theme that we have not yet seen, being the signature theme from the vampires in the set. My guess is that this new theme may play similarly to the Bloodthirsty mechanic that was seen on a few vampires from M12, an example being Blood Rage Vampire. But for the Spirit Tribal deck, I think this will be a mechanic we already know. It likely won't be the Disturb mechanic, as we already know that the chances of a double-sided commander deck being printed have already been discussed and have been ruled out in a video from Gavin Verhey on his video on why there is no Werewolf Tribal deck. But there is one mechanic I think will be used: flashback. Casting things out of our graveyard does feel as though it would fit in the spirit theme, and we may see a spirit or spirit commander that supports this. But since we don't know what that commander could be, I'm building a deck with these themes in mind. And if I'm right, Spirit Squadron will be two colours, likely white and blue. But the deck I'm building today is going to add red, so we can include the Graveyard and Spirit Matters cards from the recent Strixhaven set. So any new cards that support this theme can be added to this deck to power it up. Our commander for this deck could have been two different legends: Savine the Chronoclasm or Kykar, Wind's Fury. If I was to lean into the flashback as the main theme, I would have chosen Savine, but we are going to use Kykar and focus more on the spirits. As we know spirits are coming, and my theory on flashback is just my best guess on what the supporting mechanic could be. But do you think I'm right? Or do you have another idea on what the new commander decks will be built around? Let me know in the comments below, and if you're watching this after we found out about the Crimson Vow commander decks, you can tell me if I was either mad or if I can somehow see the future. And let me know if you want me to come back to this Spirit Tribal deck after Crimson Vow has been released and add new cards to the list. And while I'm asking you to do things, subscribing to this channel really is the best thing you can do to help this channel keep growing and reach new people. So I'd love to have you join my growing group of subscribers. But onto the deck. So we have chosen Kykar. Kykar is a 4-mana bird wizard, costing 1, a blue, a red and a white. For this deck, its important line of text is that whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we create a 1/1 white spirit creature with flying. This deck runs 38 lands and 21 creatures including our commander, so that leaves 41 cards that can trigger our commander to make a spirit. And 7 of those cards have flashback, meaning they can trigger our commander a second time. These tokens should add to our 16 spirits, 11 spirit token creators, and 12 spirit pump effects we have in this deck to fill our board with a ghostly army and scare our opponents to death. Kykar can also sacrifice a spirit for red mana. This deck is not planned to storm off using this ability, but it can be useful if we're running out of mana or our creatures are already getting removed. But hopefully mana won't be an issue, because we will start our deck tech now by looking at our ramp. In Jeskai, we're mostly reliant on mana rocks to help ramp us throughout the game, but our commander loves these, as we get an extra spirit if Kykar is out for each rock we cast. The usual suspects of Sol Ring and Wayfarer's Bauble make up our best turn 1 plays, followed at the 2 mana slot by our 4 signets in Azorius Signet, Boros Signet, Izzet Signet and Arcane Signet. We also have all 3 talismans in Talisman of Conviction, Talisman of Creativity and Talisman of Progress, which I suspect Talisman of Progress will be getting a reprint in the next set of commander decks, to hopefully get the currently $10 price down. At 2 mana we also have Mind Stone and a Felwar Stone to end our fast mana rocks. We have one last mana rock in the form of Heraldic Banner. When this artifact enters the battlefield, we are asked to choose a colour. In most cases we will want to say white, as most spirits and spirit tokens in this deck are or contain white. Heraldic Banner will then pump the power of all our white creatures by +1 and tap for white mana. Let's look at our draw next. Most of our draw effects are on non-creature spells, and this is the area we will find almost all of our flashback cards. Our only creature in this category is Sigh of the Storm, which is a 6 mana flying spirit that will draw us a card whenever we cast one of our spirits. This card doesn't seem too powerful, but if more powerful spirits come out, we may find ourselves pushing away from the flashback cards and including more spirits in this deck. We have 2 cards that will draw us cards based on the size of our spirit army. Those are Distant Melody and Ribbons of the Recce. Illuminated History lets us discard any number of cards and then draw that many, gaining us a 3/2 red and white spirit token if we have 7 or more cards in our graveyard. And Lorehold Command lets us choose 2 options from its list of 4. We can make a 3/2 spirit token, we can give our creatures a +1/+0 boost and indestructible and haste for the turn. We can bolt something and gain 3 life, or we can sacrifice a permanent and draw 2 cards. For that last mode, we don't need to target or sacrifice a permanent until it resolves, so if our commander is out, we can sacrifice the token Kykar makes if we don't want to get rid of anything we have on the board at the time. But for our flashback spells, Arcane Infusion, Deep Analysis, Echo of Eons, Faithful Mending, Faithless Looting, Memory Deluge, and Otherworldly Gaze all grant us some card draw and then sit in our graveyard to be used again for their flashback costs. And that leaves us with 2 more card drawing options. Jeskai Ascendancy does a lot for this deck. Like our commander, its 2 abilities will trigger whenever we cast a non-creature spell. The first will pump our team by +1/+1 and untap our creatures. This is a great way to turn our instant speed draw effects or removal into combat tricks, or we can use this effect after combat to untap our team to protect us from any retaliation our opponents may send our way. Its other effect gives us the option to draw and discard a card for each non-creature we cast. This can help us quickly dig through our deck to find more spirits, pump effects, or more draw cards to keep going. And if we discard a card with flashback, we never need to feel bad as we can still cast it from our graveyard. Lastly, we have Ugin, the Ineffable. This 6 mana planeswalker has a passive ability that reduces the cost of our colourless spells by 2. A form of ramp, but in this deck most of our colourless spells are our mana rocks, so this isn't too important. Ugin has 2 abilities. Its +1 will exile the top card of our library face down and create a 2/2 colourless spirit token. When that token leaves play, we get to put the exiled card in our hand. This is great as it helps fill out our spirit army and gives us some card when the tokens Ugin creates either dies, are bounced, or are exiled. Ugin's -3 can also remove a permanent as long as it is coloured, so no lands or most artifacts. This ability is useful to have, but not the reason Ugin is included in this deck. Our plan for this deck is to create an army of spirits, and while our commander can make some tokens, we have more ways to create even more tokens. Custody Soulbinder, Drogskull Cavalier, and Twilight Drover all have activated abilities that will create a 1/1 spirit creature token. Drogskull Cavalier will also gain us life whenever we have a spirit enter the battlefield, and Twilight Drover will gain a +1/+1 counter each time we have a creature token leave the battlefield. Carrion Spirit will create us a spirit token each time we cast our second spell for the turn, and as a spirit itself. Thalia's Geistcaller will create a spirit token whenever we cast one of our flashback spells. She can also sacrifice a spirit to protect herself. Spirit Bond will make it so that for an extra white mana, we can have any non-token creature enter the battlefield with an additional 1/1 white spirit. It also gives us the ability to pay a white and a generic mana to sacrifice a spirit to give a non-spirit creature indestructible for the turn. While we can't protect a lot of our creatures, this can save a few non-spirit creatures, including our commander, from being removed. One of those non-spirit creatures we have is Quintorius, Field Historian. This will pump our spirits by +1/+0, but will also generate a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token whenever 1 or more cards leaves our graveyard. This could be with some recursion, or using our flashback cards, or with a card like Lorehold's Excavation, that we can pay 5 mana and exile a creature card from our graveyard to create a tapped 3/2 red and white spirit token. This card will also mill us on our end step, and either gain us a life or deal 1 point of damage to our opponents, filling up the yard to use this ability. The last token creator we have is Court of Grace. This card introduces the monarchy into the game, being an extra source of card draw for us, and on our upkeep we can either create a 4/4 angel if we are the monarch, or a 1/1 spirit if we are not. In this deck we actually want the spirit more than the angel, so being political and allowing someone to take the monarchy from us is a good idea. Plus it will encourage more combat around the table, making our spirit army's job of winning a little easier. Once we have made a lot of spirit tokens, we will need to make them more powerful in combat, and to do this we will need some pump effects. Like a lot of tribes, spirits have a number of lords that will provide power buffs to our creatures. Battleground Geist, Drog Skull Captain, Patrician Geist, and Supreme Phantom are all spirits that provide a power buff to our army. And Long Forgotten Gohei is an artifact that will do the same. Nobilis of War will pump all our attacking creatures by +2/+0, including itself if it is attacking. Rally the Peasants can be a great combat trick, pumping our army by +2/+0, but what makes this great is that with flashback we can either do this on 2 turns or cast it again in the same combat using its flashback to push through a lot more damage. Celestial Crusader will provide a +1/+1 boost to only our white creatures, but all the tokens we make are either white or include white, and this card can be flashed in to surprise our opponents. And Bellfire Liege will pump our white creatures by +1 and our red creatures by +1, pumping creatures that are both by +2. Great news for our spirit tokens we make from our Strixhaven cards like Quintorius. Empyrean Eagle will only provide a buff to our creatures with flying, but since most spirits fly, this should cover a large portion of our army. And Phantom General will only pump our tokens rather than our real creatures. Our last pump effect is Hoffrey Ghostforge. This dwarf cleric pumps our spirits by +1/+1, but also provides them with trample and haste. Hoffrey's other ability is that whenever another creature we control dies, we may exile it from our graveyard, and if we do, we create a token copy except that it is a spirit, in addition to its other types. This allows us to refill our board after a board wipe, and turn any of our non-spirit creatures into spirits. We can use this when our commander dies to get a spirit copy, but this is great if we can pair him with his fellow Strixhaven card Quintorius Field Researcher, maybe keeping both alive with Spirit Bond, as each creature that triggers this will leave individually, making multiple triggers on Quintorius and very quickly building us back up. We may even want to board wipe ourselves for this effect. And that segues us into our removal and recursion cards. For single target creature removal, we have Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile, Pongify, and Rapid Hybridization. For some more versatile removal, we're running Generous Gift and Chaos Swap, which can deal with any permanent type. Rip Apart will either get rid of an artifact or enchantment, or can be used to deal 3 points of damage to a creature or planeswalker. We run Counterspell and Mausoleum Wanderer as counterspells to protect what we are doing or to stop problematic cards our opponents are playing. Mausoleum Wanderer can act as a great Rattlesnake card. It gains +1/+1 whenever a spirit enters the battlefield, and can be sacrificed to counter a spell unless the spell's controller pays mana equal to Mausoleum Wanderer's power. With some of our lords, this should deter our opponents from thinking of using cards against us. Hour of Reckoning is one of our board wipes, but will only destroy non-token creatures. This can leave us with an army of spirits and wipe away our opponent's boards. And Blasphemous Act and Vanquish the Horde are board wipes that get cheaper to cast the more creatures they have to destroy. We have 2 pieces of recursion in Returned Pastcaller and Venerable Warsinger. Returned Pastcaller is a one-off effect that on entering the battlefield can return an instant sorcery or spirit card from our graveyard to hand. But when Venerable Warsinger deals combat damage to an opponent, we can return a creature with mana value equal to or less than the amount of damage it dealt to that player from our graveyard to the battlefield. And that takes us to the end. Add 38 lands and we are done. Our Kykar Spirit Tribal deck in preparation for Innistrad Crimson Vow to add more support cards and make this deck either more Spirit Tribal or possibly more Flashback Tribal. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to leave me a like and subscribe for more videos in the future. And don't forget to come back once the Crimson Vow decks have been spoiled to tell me how right or wrong I was. Thank you for listening, and goodbye for now.